All right. Hello to all my listeners. This is Roy Albert, who I'm proud to be joined by today, joining us at Building Foundations. Roy is a chartered valuation surveyor, and he's also an ambassador for Lionheart. And I know me and Roy, from things that I've heard from other people within the industry, have a similar mindset about growing the industry and providing a positive example. So I'm really excited to have a conversation with Roy today. Hello, Roy, and I bet probably the best place to start really is, could you just give a brief introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yes, thanks for the e-meeting, Jess. So my name is Roy Albert. I'm based in Bristol. I'm working from home, as we all know. I am a chartered surveyor, valuation, and I work for the Valuation Office Agency in Bristol. And currently I am doing check challenge appeal. Basically, in a nutshell, it's have to do with your business rates. So all non-domestic properties pay a tax called business rates. And I'm involved in the appeal process of that. So when people are not satisfied with how much they pay, they send that appeal, and I'm the one who gets involved in the valuation.
So lots of disgruntled customers, so to speak, or is it quite hands-off from that aspect?
Well, I think the way it works now is we have that check challenge appeal process whereby we more or less receive the challenge from agents or taxpayers. And for me, my job is to ensure that whatever the tax is, it's fair and accurate. So it's not all about, what getting the highest amount, is getting what we think is fair. And with working from home, so not having that face-to-face, everything is over the internet. And as you know, the COVID, you have different people applying based on they not being able to make a living because of that. So there's quite a lot going on and trying to make the system more efficient as well.
Extra busy at the moment then.
Extra busy, yeah.
Fantastic. So thank you for introducing yourself. Probably then after that, really, the best place to start is kind of take it right back to the beginning. How did you first get into the property industry and the surveying industry, and why?
So it almost was an accidental introduction into the industry. I was born in the Caribbean, very small island of Dominica, and I was always intrigued by the great British architect, like buildings, but never wanted to become a chartered surveyor. Didn't know what that meant. However, when I moved to England, I applied for an administrative role with what used to be called the rent service. And an opportunity arose to become a rent officer, which dealt with housing benefit applications and fair rent applications. And I took the opportunity to get involved with that because I believe the built environment is a permanence. It's always going to be there. And getting involved in the built environment it's more or less a safe adventure, if you put it that way. So I got involved then, and I looked around me, I see most people trying to get ahead. And I suppose trying to get a job security, getting that extra knowledge and understanding through qualification. But it wasn't until I moved to what we call now the Valuation Office Agency, that's when I started to push myself to become chartered. Because the Valuation Office is one of the largest chartered surveyors being employed. So I looked around me and see the amount of knowledge people have acquired being part of the RICS and how we get to that next level. And I wanted to be involved with that. So every learning opportunity I got from level 4 valuation to NVQ, getting an accredited degree, and now being chartered, I took every opportunity that was given to me. And here I am today.
That's great. So how, I guess, kind of touching back to initially making the move over then to the UK, how did that feel? How was that as a process in itself?
It was very well, let's put it that way. When I left Dominica, it's an 8-hour flight from Dominica to England. I probably cried from Dominica to England because for me, I've got family in London, but moving to England was never on my radar. But certain things brought me here, And moving there and seeing everything around me, it kind of changed my whole aspect of how I look at things. Because I always say people vacation where I lived, i.e. in the Caribbean. So it wasn't something I was moving from somewhere I don't want to be. But being here now, and now being as a chartered status and the kind of impact you can have, it kind of put everything else into perspective and where it should be.
Yeah, definitely. So something you're glad you made that move, but definitely
Yeah,
difficult to start with. Leaving what's home is a challenge.
absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. So, having then made the move, and then you went into the rent officer position, you got a bit of a feel for the industry and where you could potentially go. So, how did the role come about at the valuation office agency then from there?
Yes. So I was what used to be called a rent officer for the rent service. So I was heavily involved in setting rents for housing benefit. And when I sit down and think about it now, it gives me that sort of, that was massive. It kind of, we determine how much, more vulnerable tenants or tenants as a whole would be entitled to, including the threshold. And I think it all comes down to yourself. Obviously, you have other sign-offs from senior colleagues, but it's having a very keen eye and a mature eye for what the property is doing in terms of rental, always exercising due diligence. So it kind of gives you that sense of pride because you having an impact on the industry in one way or another. But when I moved across to the valuation office, because both came together as an agency, um, I looked around and everyone started talking about being a chartered surveyor and the opportunities and having that MRICS after your name, and how it gets you out there. So for me, I was on the lookout then. I was looking for learning opportunities. I didn't have a degree myself, so getting into the program was near enough, impossible. But there were good people at the valuation office in the learning department who had discussions with the RICS of developing a route I could, or people like myself, can get into to become chartered. Because I believe at that point of time is getting people into the industry as chartered surveyors. That was very critical. Um, and for getting that opportunity is not something that you just sit down and hope it falls in your lap. You've got to chase it. So for me, getting the opportunity was looking out for any learning opportunities to deal with the real estate and talking to people, networking. And eventually we had a breakthrough whereby I could do the apprenticeship scheme. And the apprenticeship scheme, which is run not just by the valuation office, but around the UK, is where you do your degree and simultaneously you do your chartership as well. So it's a 4 years, 4.5 years program.
So, the two sort of agencies came together under the umbrella then of valuation office agency. So then you continue to get that exposure to these really great people that were doing great things. Obviously, you'd already developed that passion, because I think when you start to develop a pride in something, it kind of, you become hooked on it, don't you? Like you want to continue, you want to keep doing it. So yes, that's really good. So then the apprenticeship side of things, did you have to go through a process to get accepted to even begin that process then? How was that? Was it difficult or?
Um, well, mine was a strange story, in fact, because the apprenticeship program, I had to do a statement to say, why do I want to be in the profession? And apart from that statement, I had to attend like an interview, but it was more or less of a sit down to see, what do I want to achieve, kind of a thing. I went through the apprenticeship program. I knew it was going to be difficult because when you're juggling family, work, a degree, and 2 years into that degree, you start your APC. I knew that was going to be difficult. However, nothing can prepare you for how difficult it's going to be, because everyone have the different hurdles. And for me, I needed to draw as much support as possible. Um, there's a lot of apprenticeship programs ongoing now, and if there's any advice I need to give to anybody, is you need to be self motivated. it really doesn't matter how strict your counselor or supervisor is with you. You got to have that passion yourself, or else you will fall short. And the reason I say that is because you're trying to juggle so many things at the same time, you might be missing out on one part of it. And there's a foregone probably family, kids probably stay on the side for a bit. And then you got to have an understanding family. But most importantly is once you start that studies from university, you got to have a plan in place. You can't do things reactively because that's just not how it works. So for me, getting into the apprenticeship program, I knew I wanted to do it, but nothing can prepare you as much when you get into the hurdles because there are unforeseen circumstances. And for me, I had a few of those. So even when you prepare yourself, things come up. You got to be a bit flexible. So it wasn't as difficult because the valuation office was prepared to help me from the start. Um, and on top of that, there was support available for me, i.e., other colleagues, the learning department, and the university in Reading.
I think that's one of the good things about having done it then with the valuation office agency is that the size of the business and that support network around you.
Yeah.
But one of the questions I was going to ask you as well, which you answered perfectly, was the advice that you would give to somebody if they were in that same situation now, which, you mentioned you've got to have that passion and that drive yourself. If you don't have that, it's not going to happen. Support network, I imagine it was probably tough on your family when you were having to put in all these hours. And just like that ability to overcome those barriers, really. Would you add anything else onto there for anyone going through that, or do you think that's the main?
Yes, and networking. I've been throughout, obviously, even speaking to you today, you got my contact for somebody else. You got to be involved. I got involved in quite a lot of different aspects of the built environment. So MRICS, which is more or less where people at different stages of the career kind of sign and we share experiences, advice, you ask questions. LinkedIn is a great platform for that because it's a business platform. I was part of WhatsApp groups of other students. So networking becomes an integral part of you getting to that next level. And my best experience of being part of a networking profile was one of my questions I got asked at my interview to become chartered was a question that we got amongst, or we came up with amongst ourselves, and we deliberated as to what we think would be the best answer. And then once we came to the conclusion that that's what we think, we then brought it to somebody who more experienced to determine, oh, what is the right answer? And I got that question at my interview. So it just shows you how important it is to kind of blend in. And of course, I'm not saying that if you don't, are you not part of a network, you're not going to get through. I'm saying it makes it much easier.
Definitely. I think it's valuable to learn from other people, isn't it? And people that have already been through it and support each other. Absolutely. So do you think, so obviously when ended up going down the valuation route, and we'll talk about the becoming chartered part as well in a moment, but if you were now you're fully within surveying, you're chartered and everything, if you can look, there's so many different routes you can go down to become a surveyor, whether it's the valuation route or whether it's even building surveying, building control, quantity surveying, etc. Do you still stand by the valuation side? What would you say are the good points about being a valuation surveyor? And if not, what would you be instead?
That's a good question. I think I was probably always going to be a valuation surveyor because that's what the valuation office does.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just, I was, immensely grateful that I was given that opportunity. So being able to select another pathway probably wasn't an option. If I had to probably choose again, I'll probably be a building surveyor. And the reason for that is because I have a very keen interest in property and defects, repairs, and even when I used to work in the Cotswolds, looking at these different properties, fascinated by thatched roof and everything else like that. I always had that kind of interest. And even starting from my early years, looking at the Queen's Palace, for example, is like, how did they build that all this many years ago with lack of IT and technology. So I always had that keen interest in property anatomy. So if I had to go back, I'd probably be a building surveyor.
I think that's, I mean, valuation surveying, I hear fantastic things, but building surveying equally, yeah, it's a very good route. You get to be out and about a lot, as you said, seeing properties that you may never got to see before and learn all about how they were put together and things. So yeah, thank you for that. I know that was a bit of a random question, really, but so can I just go back to becoming chartered then? So being chartered on its own, becoming chartered is a difficult pathway, takes a lot of commitment. But you did that alongside actually doing your degree as well and having a family and working. So that's a lot on your shoulders. How did you find the process for you personally of becoming chartered? Was it difficult? Did you actually find it quite smooth? What were the challenges?
It was very difficult. So I started my degree in 2015. As a personal part of it, I'm into a lot of sports. And in 2016, in November 2016, whilst playing football, I started feeling a bit ill, and something told me to ring the ambulance. I've never rang the ambulance before, but I did, and thankfully I did, because I was getting close to a cardiac arrest. Now, I had no issues health-wise. I've been playing sports since I was 9 years old. So going through that was when I went to the hospital. The first thing on my mind was it was a Saturday, and I thought, oh, I got inspections on Monday, but it's fine. I will be out of the hospital then and do that. And I got an assignment due. So it's like you stop thinking about things that actually matters, your family and stuff, because you think everything's going to be okay. And it just so happened that it wasn't straightforward. I needed to be fitted with an ICD because it was something that just came up randomly. And again, the support from work was I could defer my learning, I think by 6 months. But in my mind, I keep thinking 6 months meant another 6 months, later down to commit to. So I did my assignment from the hospital. Wasn't my best, but I passed. But that was a massive hurdle because I had doubts then. I started thinking, with the time I've got, I don't know, none of us know how much time we've got. Do I go to school knowing that I do have a secure job in any way? Or do I take this time to spend more time with family and friends? But in the end, I think what got me through to that level was probably, apart from the passion for property, it's the fact that I knew to myself that when I started this program, it was going to be hard. I didn't prepare myself for this, what was going on, but I just thought to myself, it's just another hurdle I can overcome. So, after all was said and done, I didn't defer. I carried on. And again, the support was fantastic from the university, from the valuation office, from the RICS. And that got me even more motivated. And I say that because for me, I thought, what if something has happened? Make sure from now on, every time you've got an assignment, you're more proactive, just in case. So I suppose if you want to say, it probably get me in another position where don't take anything lightly.
Yeah, definitely. That's I'm obviously sorry you had to go through that. I think it shows. I mean, that shows your character. Just that part alone, really, for you to still be working whilst in a hospital bed. I mean, that's commitment. And I'm glad you got through it, and you've become chartered now. So it was.
I'm bored of it.
So how did it feel when you've gone through all of that? That's a lot for any one person to go through. How did it feel when you found out that you'd officially become chartered?
I mean, in the first gate, I was convinced I got deferred because they say you don't fail or pass. You don't fail, you get deferred, i.e. on your interview, the panel think, you're not quite there yet. And the way it's done is when you go through an interview, they want to determine whether or not you're safe hands. So because as soon as you finish this interview, as soon as you qualified, you could pretty much start your own company as a qualified surveyor. So to the panel, it's all about, is he or her a safe pair of hands? and whether or not you have or demonstrated that you actually know what you're talking about. And I think going through my interview and being the first cohort to do it online, there was a lot of not skepticism. Because I'm very, I'm a very positive person. But I started thinking, normally you would be going to a hotel or another building to have your interview. All of a sudden, we're hit with this where we have to do everything online. What if the IT fails? Are they going to be a bit stricter with us? A lot of things go through your mind. So I convinced myself, Jess, that I didn't get through. And everyone kept asking, did you answer all the questions? And I said, well, yes, but it's whether or not I answered it correctly. And in your mind, you start thinking, oh, did I say that? Or did I say something else? Approximately, it's about 70 questions in 1 hour. So a lot of questions bump into your head and you're not too sure whether you did or you didn't. And finding out, because you find out a week later, and you start refreshing your computer from 9 a.m. on that day. And it's a tragic moment. I think that was even harder than actually preparing for the interview. That's where your nerves are, because you've done it. You've done 4 years of hard graft. It takes only 1 hour for somebody to say to you, I don't think you're quite there. I think it's a hard thing to try to take in. But, when I kept refreshing, and funny enough, I was on the phone to somebody else. He was getting prepared to sit his, and we were just talking about it. And whilst on the phone, I refreshed my phone and I saw it. And the first word I saw was congratulations. It was just an emotional moment, is what I can say. I'll never forget it. Never forget it.
It's a massive achievement, and really, really commendable. What advice would you give somebody who was going through their APC and was at those sort of final stages in terms of getting prepared for that interview? Because obviously, as you said, it is daunting. There's lots of questions, 70 questions, 1 hour. Then you've got the wait after just to find out, yes or no. What advice would you give them?
I think a lot of times we think we need to study hard and revise because it's about revision. But I've always learned that it's not a quiz. It's not getting 9 over 10. So my advice is it's about studying in a smart way. And what I mean by that is you have various competencies to cover, and some are mandatory, some are technical. What I did is I didn't go a full blast whole day, just my head in the books. I took regular breaks, because what you end up having is just a whole heap of information in your head that you really can't really categorize. So for example, if I did data management, I would do 40 minutes, take a break, like 20 minutes break, just to relax, and then start again. But more importantly, it's not about just reading. I use YouTube, I use podcasts, and other platforms of learning. Because if you read too much, different people, I suppose, as well, Jess. But for me, what worked for me is I used to listen to short videos on YouTube, because you can more or less get that information in and you kind of remember it. You read, but sometimes you can forget that line. So it's kind of mixing your learning, i.e. reading, podcast, YouTube. And as I said, networking, getting on a WhatsApp message. Sometimes some topic of discussion goes on for a long thread and you can remember that, because you remember when one of your colleagues spoke about ethical conduct, about something, and it became a massive tirade of emails or messages. So things like that kind of stick in your mind, and that worked for me, because I was sat at these very positions at the table waiting for my interview, and most of what I remembered wasn't what I read. Most of what I remembered was what I heard. And what I heard was through conversation over the phone, videos, what have you. But once I got into my interview, obviously what I've read also came into play. But sitting there, I could hear the different conversations about. So I think, if anything, you need to mix the way you learn, and not about revising for a whole day, but revising in bits.
Yeah, definitely. If I go back to when I was at university and I was studying and getting ready for my exams, you can just get lost and sit there for 12 hours straight staring at a book, writing notes, and you leave it and you don't remember anything. I'm like you, a bit more sort of visual or audio learning, but like I said, everyone's different, aren't they? But that's some really good advice for people, obviously looking at that. Okay, so if we now look at what else you're involved in, so I saw sort of on LinkedIn, and I've heard bits about Lionheart, and that's something you're involved in, isn't it?
Yes.
So for anyone that doesn't know what it is, what is that, and how are you involved?
Well, interestingly, I did get some information. So I got involved through Lionheart, again through networking. Whilst I was preparing for my interview or my APC, I was on LinkedIn, and it came up. It kept coming up on my timeline. So I kind of clicked into it to find out what it's about, what they do. So Lionheart it's a charitable organization, and it's specifically for RICS professionals and their family. And I believe they've been going for about 120 years. So they've got a very, very rich history. And they offer flexible and personal support for the professionals, and I say, and for the families. So when I became chartered, I kept in touch with a few RICS people that I was asking about things like technical help. So my night before my interview, what the RICS does is they get in touch with all the candidates, again, personal. You log into this webinar, and they check everything is working. So your mic, your video, kind of have a video of what the RICS is. So it's kind of something to get you in the zone. And the night before my interview, I had some technical problems with my mic wasn't working, my video was temperamental, and two members of staff from the RICS, they said to me basically, don't panic, we're gonna stay logged on until we rectify it. So we went on for like an hour plus, and I'll never forget them. So what I did, I sent a message to the RICS as feedback, because most times when something bad happens, we complain, but we never get to that point where we give a positive feedback. So then I said, how they were and how they got me to get my stuff sorted. And we kind of stayed in touch. And then one of them asked me, do I want to get involved with the Lionheart? And I said, oh, interestingly, I saw this come up on my timeline. I said, yeah, I want to involve. So apart from being there for professionals and their family, they offer a wide range of services. For me, I'm more specific to kind of mentoring. So for APC, you kind of give the best advice, your personal experience, going through the process. Particularly, I was one of the first ones to go online assessment, which is, for the foreseeable, that's always going to be. So a lot of people did me on LinkedIn is all about not, what's 1+1. It's all about what's your personal experience. How did you feel on the day? How did you feel leading up to the day? And funnily enough, it's something that people find really useful. Apart from the knowledge, they want to know what the experience is. How do they prepare for it? So that's kind of my line of involvement with Lionheart. On top of that, we have different ambassadors who deals with the mental welfare of members, particularly now, people working from home and difficulties with the business. So the RICS, it's a free service. You ring them up, you have discussion. They're very present on social media, particularly LinkedIn. So I'm more than happy to give them. I got the addresses and how they work. So anything to do with unemployment, redundancy, workplace bullying, physical health, mental health. They give free CPD, debt advice. So it's really in depth as to the support that they give. And I've had a lot of different people say, they've contacted them and it's been great in respect of what they do. They also do counseling as well. So it's quite a very useful service offered by Lionheart, and I believe they rely on charitable givings as well from companies and members. And for me, I mean, since I became an ambassador, I've used them as well, and they were fantastic. So for me, the Lionheart is an integral part of the RICS, because as we all know, things are not always going smoothly. And I believe they've got a mental health workshop on Thursday. So again, members can log in and get involved.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I will, when I release this episode, I'll put the links on there as well, because I think such a valuable offering, isn't it? Especially at the moment. I mean, times of a testing with everything that's going on, and yeah, I don't think necessarily everyone will have heard of them. So it's good to spread the awareness, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I appreciate that. Yes, the awareness, it needs to be there. But I think when you look at Lionheart, for example, as a charitable organization, sometimes we tend to think, oh, can they offer? How much can they offer? The question is, okay, I can go to them, but how much can they offer? And I think that the easy answer to that is go to them and find out. I know there's a massive case ongoing, and one of the members, he got in touch with Lionheart, and he didn't realize the amount of support that he could have gotten from them. And I just think that's just a typical example of, you might be looking at other avenues, probably going to pay for something somewhere else, and you've got that on your doorstep. So as you said, it's the awareness and people being aware of what can be offered to them.
Definitely. I think a lot of people need support at the moment. It's hard to reach out for it, but to know that there's specific support for your industry there, it's valuable, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of probably leads on, really, because we touched upon some of the issues that there probably are in the industry at the moment, around mental health, unemployment, etc. Aside from those things, what do you think the main challenges are in the sector at the moment, and with surveyors as a whole? Do you foresee any or see any?
Yes. I think top of my list, and it's my personal list, would be sustainability. And I say that because we look at the very definition of sustainability is basically creating a built environment now which doesn't compromise the built environment for the future. And being able to do that, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with technology. And I remember I read a piece on the RICS website about flooding isn't caused by too much water. It's caused by nowhere for the water to actually escape. So it remains there and it just soaks in. And it's all about analyzing this kind of information and determining how do we fix that, or where do we go from that. And I believe if you look across the board, across the built environment, one thing we used to have quite a lot of is waste. You go to construction sites and you'll see broken bricks, bits of steel, and companies overorder stuff, and then you think, okay, because you overorder, what's going to happen to this? It ends up in a landfill. And it's about ordering what you need, exactly how much you need, and having that efficient analysis of what goes into the building. So I think the biggest challenge, and it's one that the RICS and the government has been trying to give attention to, it is sustainability for me. It kind of sits on everything that we do, because sustainability itself is on the three pillars of social, environmental, and economical steps. And getting all of that in place, it's never going to be easy, but we cannot just ignore it. Apart from the sustainability part of it, I think there's obviously, as you know, a shortage of residential properties. And I think as much as we build, we're still going to have the issue of affordability. I.e., you can have many buildings, but can we afford to buy? And I think that's a challenge. And for me personally, when I moved to England, when I started getting involved in becoming a chartered surveyor, I used to always think, is this for me? A black man from a small island. Even when I go to do my inspections, I used to come up against middle-aged white men with tweed jackets. I used to always think that there wasn't enough diversity in the RICS. And diversity, I mean by mixture of women, gender, sex, religion, color. But going through it, I started thinking, is it a matter of not enough people being invited in, or people just not aware of how to get in?
Yeah.
Because my personal journey, I had no issues of the color of my skin. I had no issues of where I was from, was treated as everybody else equally. So I started wondering, what is the main issue here? And speaking to people, is some people don't know how to get into real estate. Some people wasn't aware how to become a chartered surveyor, even if they had that keen interest of being so. So I think the challenges for that part of it is there needs to be more awareness. And as I said, for me personally, I never had an issue with who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge here is probably going to be reversed to people like myself in terms of getting across to people, if that's what you want to do, there is nothing stopping you from doing that, irrespective of your color, your creed, or your gender.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on all of those. And I think that diversity piece is something that I touched upon with Kate slightly, and it's something that I've seen as a recruiter as well in the industry. And I think, as I said, you've had a very good journey, which is fantastic. And I think that's quite the norm across the industry. It's pretty much standard that would happen. But you're right, there needs to be more people coming into the industry, which in turn will lead to more females, more people from different ethnic backgrounds, etc., etc. But how do you think we can go about getting these people in? Because that's kind of one side aim of this podcast, is that hopefully I can start to get it out to an audience that would be people that maybe are still studying at A levels or college or even at university, and kind of encourage them in a little bit, hearing from people like yourself. But what do you think we can do to try and get people in? Because I think that is a big part of where it lays, isn't it? Because if I go back to sort of when I was at school, I knew what probably a bricklayer was. That's probably it. I didn't know what a surveyor was, I'll be honest. And had I known about it then, would I have a different career path now? Probably, because it's super interesting. Instead, I'll just stick to recruiting within the sector. But I didn't know about it. And if I asked my siblings and my friends, it'd probably be the same. So how can we combat that?
Yes, that's a good question. I mean, for me, for the valuation office agency, as I said, we're one of the biggest recruiters of chartered surveyors, and at the moment, there's a very large group of employment at the valuation office, from placement students to graduates to the apprenticeship route, and what they're trying to create is that greater awareness, because I think we're quite aware of the fact that someone might come into the valuation office as a placement student, as a graduate, as an apprentice, but they may go out and start their own business, join another agency, for example. But then what they've achieved in terms of learning, that's the integral part of getting the built environment moving. It's not about where they stay, it's how they move forward. And it's all about the learning, it's being learning and engaging. And to get people aware, I think some of the companies I speak to, either employees or what have you, they all have that same drive. And I think the government comes into play. More apprenticeship programs rolled out, whereby companies, because the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, how much is that going to cost? How much is it going to subsidize? And the opportunities are out there. Whether or not there's not enough advertisement as to what people can do, I don't know. But for my company, I know we specifically always putting it out there on LinkedIn, opportunities available to become chartered, or just to get involved in the real estate. But the bigger picture here is probably there should be some sort of career at school, trying to get people more aware of how important the built environment is. Because the built environment isn't just about your commercial building or your residential building or your retail building. It's everything built, bridges, roads. that forms part of our day to day. And I believe it's almost like the equivalent of football. There should be some grassroots of surveying that takes you and kind of prepare you, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to or don't want to be part of that. But I think what could be done is probably surgeries run at schools, or more awareness. And it's almost like a career path. You decide this is what's involved in there, which is something that might interest you. And I think we might get a lot more people interested in it when they start to find out exactly how much goes into it, the job security of it, the wage involved probably, and just impact they can make on the built environment.
Definitely, I'd agree. I think it is going in at schools, and then, as you said, valuation office agency are very good at it, but some companies could probably improve on it from time to time at actually getting people in, and once you've got them in the door, training them, giving them opportunities, and getting them to stick with it.
Yes.
Because if the first company you join, you have a terrible experience, there's chances that 1 in 2 people are going to just leave it behind and move on to something else, aren't they? Yeah. So that's huge. I think Kate mentioned a really good idea, which actually sounds quite fun as well, but creating like a series of books of the construction and surveying industry. So like surveyors on their day-to-day life, but like a cartoon book series for little kids, because I just thought that was a really good idea, because I think as a kid you don't see it, do you? You see Bob the Builder. That's about it. So I thought that's quite a good idea. But then so yeah, really appreciate that, and the sustainability piece. Huge on that as well. Yeah. And I think a big part of that is probably going to be the RICS and the industry as a whole also working with the environmental agencies, etc. too. My partner works for Anglian Water, so they're a local one of the utility companies here, and when there's a bit of rain, it's a nightmare. But as you said, a lot of it is because there's just nowhere for it to go.
Yes, that's right.
So I think it's kind of almost got to be a partnership, hasn't it, where you're working with people outside of surveying to fix the problem.
Yes, that's correct. There must be a lot of collaboration between the government, other businesses, etc. Yes.
Absolutely. So we touched upon the challenges that you think there are, and how we could potentially overcome some of them. It's probably a conversation you could talk about for hours and hours. But just briefly, I guess, so if you were to tomorrow be at a school delivering a speech about the surveying industry and why they should come into it, what would be the top few things that you would say? What would be your selling points, if you like, of the industry to people that don't know anything about it?
I think first and foremost, particularly doing what we're going through, I think there's a good job security. I am quite aware of a lot of redundancies. People have lost their jobs, but this is uncertain times. None of us saw this coming. But as far as job security goes, it's one of the strong points. When I became chartered, from one day to the next, I became that sort of cog in this machine, whereby I had a number of people email me on LinkedIn to say, congratulations, can I pick your brain, kind of a thing. So you become from non-chartered to chartered. It's almost like a transformation where people think you almost know more from one day to the next. And I feel like going forward, it's been so rewarding for me, because a lot of people I've spoken to, they didn't have that sort of exposure, because they see someone get qualified on LinkedIn, they might say, oh, hi, blah, blah, how do I get through that? And they don't really get a response. And a lot of the people, I try to make the time to help out, be it a technical question or just advice on, your mental health going forward. And I believe trying to get that across to anyone thinking of surveying is about trying to say to them, the impact you're going to make on the built environment is immeasurable. And in such a way that it isn't just about what you do on your daily role as in your job, but it's aside from that, the learning you get across. And the future for me is a matter of we need to be more innovative and getting more different ideas across. You know, it's about people coming and say, right, how can I make this better? How can I get this to the next level? And I believe sometimes when you're part of a system for so long, you might not get that sort of, sight of what can be different. You need other people coming in, having a different view of things, and it's trying to get it across to the young people now that you could make a difference whereby everyone is aware of that. They know that, Roy established or brought in this part of it to get us moving. Because as I said, the built environment is all around us. It's always going to be there. And it's part, I say that very loosely, but it's part of a house to live in, somewhere to shop, somewhere to do this, a bridge to cross. So I think it's a matter of saying to everyone, listen, this is always going to be there. The real estate, if you look around you, the real estate is something that's growing. And it's growing because everyone's trying to make it better. Sustainability wise, everyone is trying to be more sustainable as best they can, from simple things of having, motion bulbs, for example. If you live in a flat, you might have the hallway where all the lights are constantly on during the day. Oh, it may just come on by when people is present. So all these little things you've got to try to get across to people now. Even when I speak to other people, it's about how can they make a difference. And I think we all can make a difference, whether it's one that's a large one, small, medium. I think it all comes together to influence the surveying and the profession as a whole. Ultimately, I can speak for my organization, the RICS. The difference that the RICS is trying to be making now is across all the boards: sustainability, diversity, innovation. And I look at it, and as soon as I became a member of the RICS, the opportunities was flooding. The job prospects, being part of different programs, learning programs, consultation. And I just think even once you retire, which is a long way away, you still have freelance work, because that experience comes across. So there's always that opportunity to do more with what you've got. And for me, I'm proud to be a chartered surveyor, and I'm proud to tell people I'm a chartered surveyor. And I think what it brings to me, even if I wasn't chartered, my passion for property and wanting to make a difference is what I use to motivate me to that next level. I want to make a difference either which way. So for me, the surveying profession is trying to say, you know what happening now? A lot of due diligence. We have to be responsible for everything we do. Even if I was to value a studio flat or a mansion, my due diligence is the same.
Yeah.
I want to give a valuation which I can show on my report. I have a story of how I got to that value. So whether your valuation is £60,000 or £6 million, I want to be able to come back 10 years in time to say, oh, yeah, that's all you got there. And every member, that's what is instilled in them. And I think that in itself is a massive part of trying to have a built environment that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see you mentioned being proud to be a chartered surveyor and passionate about the industry, and that's been evident throughout this whole conversation, which is it's great to hear and it's great to see. And I've never spoke to, as a recruiter, I've never spoke to a surveyor who said, I wish I hadn't become a surveyor. Everybody loves it, and your passion for it and wanting to make a difference is exactly why I wanted to speak to you today and have this chat. And I hope that people, coming into the industry, or even people in the industry as a whole, can learn something from it. Absolutely. So just to kind of finish up there, from my side, and obviously if there's anything you want to talk about afterwards, we can. But what does the future look like for you then? What have you got any plans within the industry or anything exciting going on?
Well, I'm at the minute I'm part of We Got the Surveyors Hub, which is a Facebook group where people from different pathways kind of share their experiences, their daily inspections, evaluations. And what I've learned in there is even if you have your building surveyor, a QS, a valuation surveyor, we all have the same common ground, which is we're trying to make a difference in the real estate sector. But I also learned that a lot of how we do things are a bit different. And it's not a lack of consistency, it's more trying to be more efficient in how you do things. So, when I joined the hub, I think what I was looking at was how can I learn, what new things can I bring on board in my pathway, valuation. But I found out that actually I learned much more from other pathways that kind of indirectly relate to valuation. So the Surveyors Hub, I'm part of that. Also part of Property Elite. Again, this is all about consultation and helping people through the pathways, the APC pathway. Currently, as the valuation office, I am working with Check Appeal. It's quite challenging, but it's something that I'm enjoying, and for the foreseeable, I'll be part of. Personally, I have now embarked on becoming an assessor for the RICS. So I've done my training. Last week I did my training. And the reason why I wanted to be part of an assessor is not just about learning myself or keeping updated with guidance and everything else. It just takes me to when I was sat at this table and a panel, interactive panel asking me question. And they were great. The panel was great. The chairman was very polite, but I was still nervous because it's a daunting moment. And I want to be being part of that, but on the other side of the table, whereby I'm not the one kind of panicking everything. It kind of drove me to thinking that, I can make a difference to someone else's life. And I say that not because, oh, we're going to defer people or pass people. It's always been said that the panel wants everyone to be successful. There is no trick questions. No one's trying to trip you up. We're trying to help you, if anything. And I want to be part of that. I want to be able to sit at this table and interviewing someone and know I can see they know the answer. How can I help them to get that out to them with a follow-up question? I want to be part of that. So becoming an assessor for me, even what I said to my colleagues, based on what I've learned so far, I'm happy to give tips and sort of give them a grounding of, little things that can help you be more prepared. The questions are always going to be different, but the preparation is always going to be the same. And that is knowing what to do and revising. So yeah, so now I'm embarking on being an assessor. And my future plans, I would probably want to be an FRICS, not just for the letters, but I want to be able to build on what I know now and keep learning. I don't want to be stagnant because I think there's too much out there to learn to be stagnant. So that's my plan now for the foreseeable future. And what happens after that, I think it's entirely up to me, really, as to how hard I want it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's lots of things going on there, and it's all, like I said, all about developing yourself, helping other people, and making changes to the industry, which is fantastic. And I think more people also do need to go down the FRICS route as well. So that's fantastic. Yeah, sounds super exciting. So, is there anything that you would like to touch upon, or anything you'd like to say to anybody listening, or are you do you think you've covered everything?
Well, yeah, I think in the main, I want to say a massive thank you, Jess, because I think, again, it's another thing of networking. And I found this very, very, very enlightening because it's something where we sit down and have a chat about it. But I think most importantly, it's about trying to get a message across that irrespective of your career path, we're talking surveying here, it could be anything. I believe that a lot of times we can become stagnant in what we do and not trying to elevate that. I'm a valuer, and probably my pathway is not as leading as being a QS, for example, how I build a property. However, for me, where my pathway stands as a valuation surveyor, it's about applying my ethical standards. And it's about, if I value a property, everything needs to be transparent. And ethics is all about your morals. And I believe across the agency or across the valuation, the RICS or any other platform, it's about having that ethical conduct about you. So if anything, my message to anyone coming into this industry, I think what's most important is applying your 5 standards, ethical standards, importantly, being transparent in everything that you do, treating others with respect. And I think what's going to raise sometimes is trying to take responsibility, because when I do my work, I might have someone sign it off for me, a senior colleague. But when we come back to it, it's about who did this. Well, Roy did it. I'm responsible for that. And my responsibility and my action is about following due diligence and making sure everything that I've done or covered is in my report. So my advice to anyone coming to agency, it's one thing getting in there. The next thing is being able to action what you've learned. And what I've learned, apart from the technical part of valuation, it's about always trying to be ethical, and that's what I want to do. So my message will always be, always act professional, whether it's in your daily work life or your personal life. Because with the RICS, they got a disciplinary panel, and I think it would be shameful after preparing for something after such a long period of time to lose that, letters after your name. It's tragic. So I believe it's about maintaining that professional conduct, in fact. But most importantly, I just want to say thank you for us having this little chat. I think it was very useful.
No, you're welcome, and thank you so much for given me some of your time and discussing things. I think people can learn so much from you, and I think conversation could have lasted for hours and hours, really, because I think there's so much you can talk about. But those core values you mentioned, I think you show those in abundance, which is fantastic. And that's the way I like to work in recruitment and in my life too. And I can definitely agree with you on that one. And I agree that people coming into the industry should absolutely look to that as well. But yeah, thank you so much. If anybody wants to reach out to you once this gets released, can they do that via LinkedIn? Is that okay?
Yes, via LinkedIn, would be happy with that, of course. Yes.
Well, I will put your LinkedIn link on the notes of this as well, so it would go out, and you might have some budding surveyors messaging you asking for a bit of advice.
But I'll be more than thankful to do that. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Roy.